الله وسلم على سيدنا محمد رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه.
We start with the name of Allah and we praise Him for the endowments that He bestowed upon us, and we ask Allah to raise the rank of our beloved Prophet Muhammad and his noble companions and believing relatives.
نبدأ بفصل الجمعة. كنا بدأنا به وأنهيناه.
So we have completed the section pertaining to the Jumu'ah prayer.
قال المؤلف رحمه الله: فصل: ويجب على كل من صلى مقتديا في جمعة أو غيرها ألا يتقدم على إمامه في الإحرام والسلام.
The author, may Allah have mercy upon him, said, section: it is obligatory upon everyone who follows another while performing the Friday prayer or other prayers not to precede one's imam in the opening saying of Allahu Akbar or in the salam.
بل تبطل المقارنة فيهما إذا قارنه في الإحرام أو في السلام بطلت صلاته.
Rather, simultaneity in either of them invalidates the prayer. If one was simultaneous with his imam in the opening Allahu Akbar or in the salam, then his prayer would be invalidated by that.
يجب على المأموم أن ينتظر انتهاء الإمام من كل تكبيرته ثم هو يبتدئ، وليس قبل أن ينطق بآخرها مثلا. ليس بمجرد بدء الإمام هو يبدأ، بل ينتظر انتهاء الإمام من التكبير فيبدأ هو، وكذلك في السلام.
He must wait first for the imam to complete saying Allahu Akbar. Once the imam has completed the statement, the opening statement of Allahu Akbar, then after that the follower would initiate his own takbirah, his own opening Allahu Akbar. And likewise with as-salam, he would wait for the imam to complete his salam before he starts. Therefore, he would not start saying Allahu Akbar. Even if the imam started saying Allahu Akbar before him, he would not, and he has not yet completed saying Allahu Akbar, the follower would not start saying Allahu Akbar. Rather, he needs to wait until the imam completes his statement of Allahu Akbar.
لأجل هذا قال الفقهاء: لا ينبغي للإمام أن يمد تكبيرته ولا سلامه، لأنه إن مد عند البدء بالصلاة، إن قال الله أكبر، قد بعض المأمومين يبدأ قبل أن ينتهي هو، فقالوا لا ينبغي للإمام أن يمد تكبيرته ولا أن يمد سلامه، لأنه أيضا قد يسلم بعض المأمومين قبل أن ينتهي هو من المد.
And this is why the scholars said that the imam should not elongate his takbirah, the opening Allahu Akbar, nor should he elongate the closing salam, because it is feared that if the imam were to elongate the opening takbirah, for example, he says Allahu Akbar, as the Shaykh has demonstrated, then it is feared that some of the followers, they might start saying Allahu Akbar before the imam completed saying Allahu Akbar. And likewise the closing salam, if he were to elongate the closing salam in pronunciation, then it is feared that some of the people, some of those who are following him, would say as-salam before he completes saying as-salam.
وتكره في غيرهما، تكره المقارنة في غير الإحرام وفي غير السلام. يعني إن ركع الأولى للمأموم أن ينتظر وصول الإمام للركوع فيبدأ هو، وأن ينتظر وصوله للسجود فيبدأ هو، ولا ينزل معه، فإن نزل معه مكروه لا تبطل صلاته.
The author said simultaneity in other than these two matters is disliked. Being simultaneous with the Imam, for the follower to be simultaneous with the Imam in other than these two matters is disliked. Rather, the follower should wait until the Imam reaches his position until he starts going in that position. For example, he would not start going into al-ruku' until the Imam has reached that position of al-ruku', and he would not start making as-sujud until the Imam has reached that position of as-sujud. This is the more complete way. However, if he were to be simultaneous with his Imam in these movements, then this would not invalidate the prayer, rather it is disliked.
وأما التقدم على الإمام في الموقف فهو مكروه إلا لضرورة. أما بالموقف لا يحرم ولا تبطل الصلاة، بل تصح ولو وقف المأموم أمام الإمام، لكن يكره ذلك إن لم يكن لضرورة.
The author said, as for preceding one's Imam in the standing position, it is disliked unless there was a necessity. When it comes to the standing position, if the follower were to stand ahead of the Imam, he preceded his Imam in the standing position, for him to stand ahead of the Imam is not forbidden, nor does it invalidate the prayer. Rather, it is disliked unless there was an excuse, a necessity.
لكن يبقى عليه أن يعلم بانتقالات الإمام. إن وقف أمامه كيف يرى الإمام ليعلم بانتقالاته؟ إن علم بطريقة كالسمع، كان يسمع تكبيراته مثلا، يكفي. يعني يجب مراعاة معرفة انتقال الإمام، لكن تصح ولو كان أمامه وعرف بانتقالاته صحت.
However, if he were to stand ahead of the Imam, as we said, this would be valid and it is not forbidden. Rather, it is disliked if it was done without a necessity. However, this is with the condition that he is aware, he knows the movements of his Imam. For example, he hears the statements of the Imam to indicate the different movements of the Imam. Even if he stood ahead of the Imam in this case, the prayer would be valid. So it is a condition for him to still know the movements of the Imam.
تذكرون أظن أمس أو قبل أمس ذكرنا أن المأموم عندما يسلم ينوي بتسليمته الخروج من الصلاة بالقصد الأول، وينوي بالتبع رد السلام على الإمام. تذكرون؟ نعم. فعندما يرد السلام على الإمام يقولون ويسلم قبالته، ولو كان بين يدي الإمام، ولو كان وقوفه أمام الإمام، جلوسه أمام الإمام، عندما يسلم ويريد أن ينوي رد السلام على الإمام يبقى وجهه قبالته إلى الأمام، لا يلتفت للخلف لأن الإمام خلفه.
And if you remember yesterday or the day before, we said the follower in the congregation, when he says the closing salam, he intends by that exiting from the prayer. And we said with the first salam, he also intends by that, following the intention of exiting the prayer, to reply to the salam of the Imam. Therefore, if one were to be standing ahead of the Imam, when he says his closing salam, he would not look behind him so that he would reply to the Imam. It wouldn't be done in this fashion. Rather, he would not turn his head to the back. Rather, it would be facing towards the front.
وقيل حرام لكن لا يبطل. قيل أن التقدم على الإمام في الموقف حرام لكن لا يبطل الصلاة، لكن هذا خلاف المشهور.
And it was said that it is prohibited but does not invalidate the prayer. That is, standing ahead of the Imam in the standing position, according to a saying, is considered forbidden, haram, impermissible. However, it does not invalidate the prayer. And this saying is not the famous saying. Rather, the famous saying is what we mentioned previously, that it is disliked.
مكروه. نعم. وأن يعلم بانتقالات إمامه ولو كان بينهما نهر أو طريق. من شروط الاقتداء أن يعلم كما ذكرنا انتقالات إمامه، ولا يشترط أن لا يكون بينهما حائل يمنع الاستطراق، ولو كان بينهما نهر يمنع المرور من هذه الضفة إلى هذه الضفة، مع هذا تصح القدوة بشرط أن يعلم انتقالات الإمام.
And among the conditions for the validity of following the Imam is to know the movements of one's Imam, even if there was a river or a road between them. As long as he knows the movements of the Imam, even if there is a road or there is a river, even if there is a barrier that prevents the follower from reaching the Imam, such as a river, for example, that he is not able to pass, as long as he knows the movements of the Imam, then this is sufficient.
ولو كان الإمام في طابق والمأمومون في طابق آخر إن علموا بانتقالاته صحت صلاتهم.
And even if the Imam was on one floor and the follower was on another floor, as long as he knows the movements of the Imam, his prayer is valid.
وجاز اقتداء ركاب سفن متقاربة في المرسى واقفة أو سائرة بإمام واحد يسمعون أقواله أو يرون أفعاله أو أفعال من معه من المأمومين. كذلك هذا ينطبق تحت هذه القاعدة أنه الشرط أن يعلم بانتقالات الإمام. فيمثل المؤلف أنه ولو كانوا في سفن، الإمام في سفينة والمأمومون في سفينة، سواء كانت راسية واقفة في المرفأ أو سائرة، تصح هذه القدوة بشرط أن يكونوا يسمعوا تكبيراته ليعرفوا انتقالاته أو يرونه ليعرفوا انتقالاته.
The author said it is permissible for those aboard numerous neighboring boats, whether anchored in a port or sailing, to follow one Imam whose statements they hear, or whose actions they see, or they see the actions of the followers with the Imam. So this follows under what we have previously mentioned, but this is another example that if they are on numerous boats or ships, as long as they can see the Imam or they can hear the Imam, even if they are in a port, or whether they are in a port anchored or they are sailing, traveling, then as long as that condition is fulfilled, they know the movements of the Imam, then this would also be valid.
ليس شرطا أن يكونوا يروا الإمام أو يسمعوا الإمام، بل يكفيهم أيضا أن يروا بعض المأمومين فيعلموا انتقالاتهم، أو يسمعوا إعادة بعض المأمومين الذي يردد خلف الإمام بصوت مرتفع ليسمع من خلفه، هذا أيضا يكفي. العبرة بالعلم بانتقالات الإمام كيفما كانت.
The condition is that this person would know the movements of the Imam. It's not a condition per se that he would see the Imam himself or hear the Imam himself. Rather, if he saw those who are following the Imam, others who are following the Imam, and so by that he knew the movements of the Imam, or he heard those who are following the Imam repeating after the Imam, so he knew the movements of the Imam by this, this would also be valid. This would also be sufficient.
ولا يجوز للإمام أن يكون في علو إلا أن يكون معه بعض المأمومين وقيل يكره إلا لكبر فيحرم، يعني أن يصلي الإمام وحده في مكان مرتفع وبقية المأمومين في مكان منخفض، هذا لا يجوز، إلا إذا كان الإمام لا يقف وحده في المكان المرتفع بل معه غيره من المأمومين وبقية المأمومين في سفل، هنا لا يحرم.
The author said it is not permissible for the imam to be elevated except if he has some followers elevated with him, and it was said that it is disliked unless it was due to arrogance, then it is prohibited. If the imam were to pray in an elevated surface or raised platform, an elevated platform alone, while all the other followers are below him, this is what was said, that it is forbidden for him to do so, unless he has some of the followers who are with him on this raised platform, then it would not be forbidden.
وقيل يكره إلا لكبر فيحرم، قيل إن لم يكن ذلك للتكبر على الناس يكره فقط لا يحرم ولو كان وحده يصلي في علو، إن لم يكن ذلك للتكبر، مع هذا مكروه.
And it was said that it is disliked unless it was due to arrogance, then it is prohibited. Meaning, if the imam were to stand alone on a raised platform while all the followers are in a lower level, then this is, according to a saying, it is disliked unless it was done out of arrogance. And so if it is done out of arrogance, then it is prohibited, it is sinful.
وليس لمصلي الفرض أن يقتدي بمن يصلي صلاة أخرى وإن توافقا في النظم، يعني من يصلي صلاة فرض ليس له أن يقتدي بمن يصلي نافلة.
The author, may Allah have mercy upon him, said, whoever is praying the obligatory prayer is not allowed to follow someone praying another prayer, even if the format of the two prayers were the same. It is not permissible, for example, for the one who is praying an obligatory prayer to follow the one who is praying an optional prayer.
يعني من يصلي صلاة الصبح ليس له أن يقتدي بمن يصلي نافلة الصبح وإن كانت كلتاهما ركعتين.
Meaning, the one who is praying the Fajr prayer, for example, he is not permitted to follow the one who is praying the two, which is 2 rak'ahs, to pray behind the one who is praying the optional 2 rak'ahs that are prayed before Fajr, even if the formats are the same.
يعني الصبح هي ركعتان ونافلة الصبح ركعتان، ومع هذا لا يقتدي به. ليس العكس، نقول عن من يصلي الفرض لا يقتدي بمن يصلي النافلة.
The subh prayer is 2 rak'ahs, and the optional prayer that precedes the obligatory subh prayer is also 2 rak'ahs. So the one who is praying the Fajr, the subh prayer, he would not follow the one who is praying the optional prayer that precedes the obligatory subh prayer. And we are not speaking about the other way around. Rather, we're speaking about the one who is praying an obligatory prayer following the one who is praying an optional prayer.
كذلك ليس لمصلي الفريضة الأداء أن يقتدي بمن يصلي الفريضة لكن قضاء.
Likewise, it is not permissible for the one who is praying the current prayer to pray behind a person who is praying a make-up prayer.
فمن يصلي الظهر أداء ليس له أن يقتدي بمن يصلي الظهر لكن قضاء.
Therefore, the one who is praying the current Dhuhr prayer, he is not permitted to follow the one who is praying a make-up Dhuhr prayer.
يقول وإن توافقا في النظم، وإن كان هذه 4 ركعات هذه 4 ركعات، هذه فيها ركوع واحد وسجودان وهذه كذلك، ومع هذا ليس له ذلك.
The author said even if the formats of the two prayers are the same, for example, even if this prayer was 4 rak'ahs and that prayer is 4 rak'ahs, even if they perform one bowing and 2 sujuds in 2 prostrations in each rak'ah, even if that is the case, it is not permissible in these cases that we described for him to engage in following that person.
ولا بد من اتحاد ذات الصلاة وصفتها وزمنها على المعتمد. يعني صفتها يعني ظهر مع ظهر، فرض مع فرض، وزمنها يعني ظهر قضاء عن أمس مع ظهر قضاء عن أمس، وليس خلاف ذلك.
And the author said, and it is a must that the prayers be the same as far as their time being current or make up and the date in which its obligation was established according to the relied upon saying.
نعم، يعني هو سيذكر يقول لا بد من اتحاد، أولا هذا لا بد من اتحاد ذات الصلاة، الصلاة تكون عينها التي يقتدي بها، وصفتها أنها ظهر مع ظهر، فرض مع فرض، ليس فرض مع قضاء.
So he mentions that it's a must that the prayer is the same, and he mentions it is a must that the description of the prayer is the same. For example, if he's praying behind someone, it's a dhuhr, someone praying dhuhr following another one who's praying dhuhr. An obligatory prayer following the one who is praying an obligation. And the current one who is following the one who is praying a current prayer, and so on and so forth.
أداء مع أداء، ليس أداء مع قضاء.
He would pray, if he's praying the current prayer, he would follow another person who is praying the current prayer. He would not follow someone who is praying a make-up prayer.
فلا يصح ظهر خلف عصر وإن اتحدت الصفة، 4 ركعات ب4 ركعات.
And thus performing the dhuhr prayer following the one who is praying the asr prayer is not valid, even though the format is the same. This is 4 rak'ahs and that one is 4 rak'ahs, yet it's not valid to do so.
ولا عكسه، عصر مع ظهر كذلك لا يصح.
And likewise vice versa, if one were to pray the asr prayer behind a person who is praying the dhuhr prayer, it is not valid.
ولا ظهر قضاء خلف ظهر أداء ولا عكسه، يعني نفس الحكم.
And likewise, it is not valid for the person to pray a current prayer behind a person who is praying a make-up prayer, and vice versa.
ولو كان كلاهما ظهر، المثال الأول ذكر ظهر مع عصر، أما هذا المثال الثاني كلاهما ظهر أو كلاهما عصر، لكن إحداهما أداء والأخرى قضاء.
Even if both prayers are dhuhr prayer, we mentioned the previous example, if the prayers are different, one praying dhuhr behind one praying asr, or one praying asr behind one praying dhuhr, and we said that this is invalid. And likewise, what is invalid is for a person to pray the dhuhr prayer that is current behind a person who is praying the dhuhr prayer as a make-up, and vice versa. This is invalid.
ولا ظهر الاثنين قضاء خلف ظهر الخميس قضاء أيضا. وقيل يصح هذا الأخير، هذا المراد بالزمن، يعني حتى قضاء مع قضاء لا بد من اتحاد ذات الصلاة وصفتها وزمنها. ذات الصلاة ظهر مع ظهر، صفتها قضاء مع قضاء، زمنها قضاء أمس مع قضاء أمس، وليس قضاء أمس مع قضاء قبل أمس.
The author said, nor is praying Monday's current dhuhr prayer behind the one who is making up.
كلاهما قضاء وكلاهما ظهر، لكن أحدهما عن ظهر اليوم مثلا والآخر عن ظهر أمس، كذلك هذا لا يصح، لكن هذا الأخير قيل يصح عند البعض إذا كان كلاهما قضاء وكلاهما ظهر، لكن أحدهما ظهر قبل يوم والآخر ظهر قبل يومين مثلا.
Nor is praying Monday's make-up prayer behind one making up Thursday's Dhuhr prayer. So if someone prays Monday's make-up Dhuhr prayer behind a person who's praying Thursday's Dhuhr make-up prayer, this is also not valid. And it was said that this case is valid. So as we mentioned previously, that it is a condition for the prayers to be the same. So Dhuhr with Dhuhr, Asr with Asr. And we said that in its description must also be the same. That is, it is a current prayer behind the one who's praying a current prayer, or a make-up behind the one who's praying a make-up. And the date needs to be the same as well. Like in the last example that we mentioned, if one is praying the make-up Dhuhr prayer of Monday, he would need to follow someone who is praying the make-up Dhuhr prayer of Monday. It would not be sufficient for this person who's making up the Dhuhr prayer of Monday to follow someone who is praying the make-up prayer of another date for Dhuhr. And there is a saying that this last example would be valid.
فإذن من أجل صحة القدوة لا بد من اتحاد ذات الصلاة.
Therefore, for the validity of following and praying in congregation, the prayers must be the same.
يعني ظهر مع ظهر، عصر مع عصر، صبح مع صبح.
Meaning Dhuhr with Dhuhr, Asr with Asr, and Subh with Subh.
وصفتها أداء مع أداء مع أداء.
And its description, meaning current prayer with a current prayer, or a make-up prayer with a make-up prayer.
أو قضاء مع قضاء.
Or make-up prayer with make-up prayer, as we mentioned.
لكن قضاء مع قضاء هذه بعضهم زاد فيها أنه حتى قضاء مع قضاء لا بد فيها من أن يكون نفس القضاء لنفس الزمن، وبعضهم هذا الأخير لم يشترطه.
And when it comes to praying a make-up prayer behind the one who is praying a make-up prayer, some of them made it a condition, as we mentioned, that it is the same make-up prayer, meaning it would be from the same date, as we mentioned previously.
فلو واحد كان في سفر فيقدم العصر إلى الظهر، إن أراد أن يصلي العصر في وقت الظهر لأنه قدمه بسبب السفر، فجاء شخص ليقتدي به بالظهر، فالأول يصلي المقتدي للظهر والإمام للعصر، فهنا اختلفت أيضا الصلاتان.
So if a person was traveling and during his travel he wanted to bring Asr prayer forward to Dhuhr prayer, so because of his traveling he prayed the Asr prayer during the time of Dhuhr, and there was someone who came who wanted to pray behind him. However, he wanted to pray Dhuhr behind this person who is praying the Asr prayer. And so here the prayers are different.
قال وجاز للمتنفل أن يأتم بمن يصلي الفرض. كل هذا الذي ذكرناه هو إذا كان المأموم يصلي الفرض.
And it is valid for the performer of an optional prayer to follow the one who is praying the obligatory prayer. So what we mentioned previously was in reference to the one who is praying the obligatory prayer. As for the one who is praying an optional prayer, it is valid for him to follow the one who is praying an obligatory prayer.
أما إذا كان يصلي نافلة فيجوز له أن يقتدي بمتنفل مثله وأن يقتدي بمن يصلي الفرض.
The one who is performing an optional prayer, it is permissible for him to follow a person who is praying an optional prayer like him, or to follow someone who is praying an obligatory prayer.
نعم. أن يعيد من أجل زوجته أو من أجل غيرها. هذا مع أنه ورد فيه حديث أن النبي عليه الصلاة والسلام بعدما أنهى صلاة الجماعة مع من معه من الصحابة دخل واحد يريد الصلاة، فرآه النبي أنه يريد أن يصلي وحده، فقال: من يتصدق على هذا؟ يعني يكسبه ثوابا، لأن صلاة الجماعة ب27 مرة عن ثواب المنفرد. فقال: من يتصدق على هذا؟ قام واحد من الصحابة وأعاد معه. هذا ورد في الحديث. المالكية سيأتي تفصيل ذلك عندهم. للذي يعيد قالوا يعيد مأموما لا إماما، ويعيد مع جماعة وليس مع شخص واحد، مع منفرد، على خلاف عندهم. يعني بعضهم صح عندهم هذا الحديث فقالوا كما يقول الشافعية، وبعضهم لم يصح عنده فشرط شروطا أخرى سنأتي على ذكرها.
So there was a question that was asked about if a person, he already prayed the prayer and then his wife wanted to pray but she does not want to pray alone, so he prayed again with her. He led her in the prayer after he already prayed. The Shaykh mentioned that there is a hadith narrated in which the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam prayed as imam in congregation with the companions. And after they completed the prayer, a companion entered upon them who has not yet prayed. And so the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam noticed that this companion was going to pray alone. So he said, whom amongst you will be charitable towards this brother, towards your brother? Meaning, who amongst you would repeat the prayer with him so that he can achieve that great reward? Because as you know, it is narrated that the congregational prayer is more rewardable than the individual prayer by 27 times. And so they repeated the prayer with this companion. And this was narrated in the hadith. The Malikis, some of them, according to some of them who judged this hadith as strong and reliable, they said similar to what the Shafi'is say about this matter. And others, they said if one wants to repeat the prayer, it is only valid if he does so as a follower and if he does so with several people, not just with one other person.
مع جماعة، يعيد مع جماعة. قالوا يعني كأن صلى الصبح في بيته ثم ذهب إلى المسجد فوجد جماعة قائمة يجوز لهم أن يعيد، بل ويندب له أن يعيد معهم جماعة.
So they mentioned if someone prayed the subh prayer alone in his house and then he went to the mosque and he saw that the congregational prayer was occurring for the subh prayer, according to them, this is valid and actually it's recommended for him to follow them in this congregational prayer.
وليس في كل الصلوات. سنأتي إن شاء الله على ذكر ذلك إن بقي الوقت.
And this does not apply to all prayers, rather this is something that will be mentioned in more detail insha'Allah ta'ala if we get to that point.
قال وأن ينوي الاقتداء مع التحرم في الجمعة وغيرها. المأموم يجب عليه أن ينوي أنه مأموم، أنه يقتدي بالإمام مع التحرم، مع الدخول في الصلاة، ليس فقط في الجمعة وفي الصلوات التي لا تصلى إلا جماعة، بل في كل الصلوات. إن أراد أن يصلي جماعة لابد أن ينوي أنه مقتدي في التحرم.
The author said, and to intend following the Imam while saying the opening Allahu Akbar in the Friday prayer and other prayers. It is a condition for the follower, the Ma'mum, who is praying in congregation, to intend following the Imam, whether this prayer is a Jumu'ah prayer, the Friday prayer, a prayer meaning a prayer that is only prayed in congregation, that is only valid to be prayed in congregation, or other than that, even a prayer that is valid to be prayed alone. In these cases, in any prayer, he needs to intend while he says Allahu Akbar, following the Imam.
فلو أحرم فزا ثم نوى الاقتداء بغيره بطلت صلاته. فزا يعني منفردا. إن أحرم في الصلاة بنية الصلاة منفردا ثم رأى شخصا أمامه يصلي مثلا الظهر أيضا وهو يصلي الظهر فنوى الاقتداء به بطلت صلاته، لأنه عندهم لا يجوز أن يغير ما بدأ به في صلاته بعدما بدأ بالصلاة.
The author said, thus had one said the opening Allahu Akbar while praying individually, then intended following someone else, his prayer is invalidated. According to them, if a person were to have started praying, he started individually and he said Allahu Akbar, praying individually, and then he saw another person praying the prayer, so when he saw that, he intended following that person, so he would follow him in prayer. This would invalidate his prayer, because according to them, you cannot change your intention from what you initially intended in the prayer.
خلافا لما هو عند الشافعي رضي الله عنه، إن رأيت شخصا يصلي نفس الصلاة ظهر مع ظهر مثلا أو حتى ظهر مع عصر أمامك ولو بدأت منفردا، يجوز لك أن تنتقل إلى ما هو أحسن بأن تنوي الاقتداء به.
And this is different from what the Shafi'i scholars mention. According to the Shafi'i school, if someone starts praying individually, he prays Dhuhr or Asr individually, and then he sees that someone else is praying the prayer, here he is permitted to change his intention to intend following that person, to follow that Imam.
وحتى الانتقال من الجماعة إلى الانفراد عند المالكية لا يجوز مع بقاء الجماعة، أظن ذكرنا ذلك.
Even intending to go from congregational prayer, if someone started the prayer in congregation and then he changes his intention to pray individually, this would also be invalid if the congregational prayer was still ongoing.
طالما الجماعة قائمة ليس له للمقتدي أن يغير رأيه وينوي أن يكمل صلاته منفردا لنفس العلة، لأنه اختار من الابتداء أن يكون مقتديا، فليس له أن يغير ما اختاره وبدأ صلاته عليه. متى ما بدأ يكمل ما نواه من الابتداء.
As long as the congregational prayer is still ongoing, the one who is the follower is not allowed to change his intention and to separate himself from the congregational prayer and pray alone, as we previously mentioned, because due to the same reason, what he started the prayer with, the intention that he started the prayer with, he does not change that intention in the prayer later on. So if he started praying in congregation, it is not valid for him to then change his intention to pray individually as long as the congregational prayer is still ongoing.
خلاف لما هو عند الشافعية. الشافعية يقولون الجماعة لا تجب عليه أصلا وجوبا عينيا، فإذا كانت لا تجب عليه فهو بالخيار أن يبقى فيها وأن يخرج منها.
And this is different from what the Shafi'is mention, because the Shafi'is mention that the Jama'ah prayer, the congregational prayer, is not a personal obligation upon him in the first place. Therefore, if he joined the congregational prayer according to them and he changes his intention to pray individually, then this would be valid, since he is not personally obligated with praying in the congregational prayer.
قال ولا يجوز انتقال من في جماعة للانفراد مع بقاء الجماعة. هذا الذي ذكرناه طالما الجماعة قائمة لا يجوز لهم الانتقال إلى الانفراد. ما معنى ذلك؟ أنه قد تفسد صلاة الإمام وهو في الصلاة، أو يتذكر أنه لم يكن على وضوء فقطع فورا وخرج، صلاتهم لم تفسد في الحالتين، إن فسد وضوءه وهو في الصلاة فخرج فورا، أو تذكر أنه ابتدأها من غير وضوء، كذلك صلاتهم لا تفسد. ماذا يفعلون؟ هم بالخيار، إن لم يقدم عليهم أحدا هو الإمام، إما أن يقدموا هم واحدا ويتموا صلاتهم جماعة بهذا الإمام الجديد، وإما أن يتموا فرادا. وتغيير النية هنا للضرورة، لأنه حصل ما أفسد هذه الجماعة، وليس باختيارهم انتقلوا إلى الانفراد.
So as we mentioned that it is not permissible for the one who is praying in congregation to switch to praying individually while the congregation is still ongoing. However, there is a case where something might happen, such as what we mentioned in the previous lessons. If the imam's prayer, for example, became invalidated, or he remembered during the prayer that he started the prayer without being on wudu. So he either invalidated the prayer while he was praying, like a ritual impurity occurred to him while he was praying, or he remembers that he was upon ritual impurity when he started the prayer. He remembers that he started the prayer while he was in a state of ritual impurity, and then he leaves his position immediately as imam. In this case, we do not say that the prayer of the followers became invalidated. Rather, the imam, he would either select one of the followers to lead the other followers in prayer, and if he does not select someone to lead them in prayer, then the followers have the choice. Either they select someone amongst themselves to lead them in the prayer, or they pray individually. And here, them changing their intention to praying individually is due to a necessity, so this would not invalidate their prayer.
يعني صلاتهم تحولت للانفراد إن فسدت صلاة الإمام وتركهم بدون إرادتهم. لأجل هذا لا يدخل في من بطلت صلاته لأنه هو نوى الانفراد. هؤلاء هم لم ينووا الانفراد، إنما حصل الانفراد بخروج الإمام. فبعد ذلك هل يتمون فرادا أو يقدمون أحدا؟ هم بالخيار، لأنهم صاروا فرادا أصلا بخروج الإمام عنهم.
So the prayer in this case, it was originally congregational, and then it transferred to a prayer that is prayed individually. The followers themselves did not willfully choose to pray individually. Rather, a matter happened in which the imam, he invalidated his wudu, as we described, and he left his position as the imam. He did not remain in that position, he left, and he did not select someone to be an imam amongst them. So now in this case, in their situation as they are now individual. So they did not select being individual or willfully be individual, change their intention to praying individually themselves. Rather, something occurred, a necessity occurred that made the prayer transform from a prayer that is prayed in congregation to a prayer that was prayed individually. So this would not invalidate their prayer.
ويجب على الإمام كل ما سبق هو في نية المأموم. الآن يذكر نية الإمام، يقول يجب على الإمام نية الإمامة مع التحرم في الجمعة وفي كل ما كانت الجماعة شرطا فيه كالمجموعة لمطر ونحوه. أما الإمام يجب عليه أن ينوي أنه إمام فقط في التحرم. نقول يجب عليه أن ينوي أنه إمام عند التحرم، عند الدخول في الصلاة، فقط في الصلوات التي لا تصلى إلا جماعة.
And so what we mentioned is in reference to the rulings or the conditions that we mentioned. This is in regards about the intention. In reference to the follower. The author said it is obligatory upon the imam to intend to lead the prayer during the opening Allahu Akbar for the Friday prayer and every prayer which congregation is a condition, like the congregational prayer due to rain and others. As for the imam, he makes the intention of leading the prayer during the opening Allahu Akbar for every prayer in which the congregation is a condition for the validity of that prayer. And he would not need to make the intention to be imam for every single prayer for it to be valid.
قال كالجمعة في الجمعة وفي كل ما كانت الجماعة شرطا فيه كالمجموعة لمطر ونحوه. الجمعة لأنها لا تصح إلا جماعة، فإن كان هو إماما لا بد أن ينوي أنه إمام من الابتداء، وليس لأنه لا يوجد فرادى، إما يكون إماما أو مأموما. وكذلك المجموعة للمطر، والمجموعة للمطر هي فقط بين المغرب والعشاء لتقديم العشاء للمغرب، هذا فقط، ليس لتأخير المغرب للعشاء ولا بين الظهر والعصر، فقط تكون للعشاء تقديما، يقدم المغرب للعشاء.
And so the imam must make the intention in the opening Allahu Akbar of leading the prayer for every prayer in which the congregation is a condition for the validity of the prayer. We mentioned the Jumu'ah prayer because the Jumu'ah prayer is only prayed in congregation. In Jumu'ah prayer, Friday prayer, one is either the imam or a follower. So one would not pray individually the Jumu'ah prayer. So the imam would need to have the intention of leading them while he says his opening Allahu Akbar. And the author said, as well as the congregational prayer due to rain, in which the prayers are combined, and this specifically pertains to bringing Isha forward to the time of Al-Maghrib, and it does not pertain to other times of the day or to delaying Maghrib to Isha. Rather, this is specific to bringing forward Isha to Maghrib.
نعم، لأنه في الليل لمن يصل، هذا أيضا لمن يصلون في المسجد وليس لمن يصلون في بيوتهم، لأنه في الليل هنا يعسر أكثر من النهار مع المطر أن يذهبوا ليصلوا المغرب في المسجد ثم يرجعوا لبيوتهم أو ينتظروا في المسجد لدخول العشاء وتشتد الظلمة وسيرجعون لبيوتهم في الظلمة. لهؤلاء أجيز لهم أن يقدموا العشاء للمغرب فقط. ذهبوا للمسجد، صلوا المغرب ويوجد مطر، المطر الشديد، مش عم تتقطر فقط قليلا، المطر الشديد الذي يبل الثوب، وكان المطر موجودا، لهم أن يقدموا العشاء ويصلوا العشاء تقديما ثم ينصرفوا لبيوتهم قبل اشتداد الظلمة. وهذا لا يدخل فيه تأخير كما ذكرنا المغرب، ولا يدخل فيه بين الظهر والعصر.
And so this last case of the combining prayers and congregational due to rain, this specifically applies to bringing Isha forward to Maghrib, and this is in the case when it is done in a mosque, in a masjid. This is one of the conditions as well. And we said due to the rain. So we are not speaking to a mere drizzle of rain or light showers. Rather, we are referring to severe rain that would soak the clothing. This is what is meant. Because it would be difficult, especially when it becomes dark at night, for them to come to Maghrib prayer, pray during the time of this raining, when there's a severe downpour of rain, and then for them to go back home and then to come back for Isha to attend. And so in this case, they are permitted to bring forward the Isha prayer to the Maghrib prayer. And it does not work the other way around. So they are not able to delay Maghrib to Isha. in this case, and likewise it would not apply to Dhuhr and Asr prayer, combining the Dhuhr and Asr prayer. Rather, this specifically applies to bringing the Isha forward to the Maghrib, as we said, due to the heavy rainfall that soaks the clothing.
وهذا الحكم إن حصل يسري على من لا يعسر عليه أيضا كجار المسجد. جار المسجد لا يعسر عليه أن يأتي لوقت العشاء، قد يكون بابه على باب المسجد، أو الإمام الذي يعيش في المسجد، أو المسافر الذي يعيش أيضا في المسجد، هؤلاء لا يعسر عليهم. لكن إن أقيمت العشاء تقديما بسبب المطر جاز لهم أن يفعلوا أيضا، يقتدوا بهم للعشاء، ليس فقط لمن يعسر عليه بل يسري على من لا يعسر عليه إن أقيمت.
And if this case occurs, then it also would apply to those whom attending the congregational prayer and coming to the mosque would not be a hardship upon them, such as the neighbor, the one who lives next to the mosque. This person, it would not be difficult, even in the case of heavy rainfall, for him to go to Maghrib, then go back home, and then attend the Isha prayer in congregation. But because there is this case that is present, the heavy rainfall, and as a result of this heavy rainfall, they bring the Isha forward to Maghrib, then even those who are not affected by this hardship, they are also allowed to pray in congregation in such a fashion. So they would pray with those who are praying this prayer. They would pray Maghrib, and they would pray Isha. The Isha would be brought forward to the time of Al-Maghrib. And this also applies to the Imam who lives in the mosque, or to a traveler who lives in the mosque. When there is this combined prayer due to the rainfall occurring present, then it would also be valid for those who are not affected by this difficulty to participate in this prayer as well.
إن حصل هذا كيف يفعلون؟ يصلون المغرب بأذان وإقامة، ثم يؤذن للعشاء في وقت المغرب، لكن قالوا في صحن المسجد وليس على المنار، حتى لا يشكل على الذين في بيوتهم فيظنوا أن العشاء دخل. يؤذن للعشاء في صحن المسجد وتقام الصلاة وتصلى العشاء.
And so if this matter occurs, how would it be performed? They would pray Maghrib, and there would be adhan and iqamah that precedes the Maghrib prayer. Then what would they do? They pray Isha as well. So they would also make adhan for Isha. But the adhan that they make for Isha, that they are praying during the Maghrib time, due to this excuse, they would make the adhan within the mosque, inside the mosque, and they would not make the adhan from the minarets. Why? Because if they make the adhan for Isha from the minarets, then some people would be confused. The people might think, those who are not present in the congregation might think that the Isha time has actually entered. And so this is why they said, in this case, when they make adhan for Isha, they would make it within, for the Isha prayer, they would make it within the confines of the mosque.
وعندما يدخل العشاء يعود يؤذن للعشاء للذين هم في بيوتهم ولو وما أتوا للمسجد. يعني هذا الأذان الذي حصل في صحن المسجد لا يغني عن سنية الأذان الذي يكون عند دخول الوقت.
And then when the Isha time comes in, then they also make adhan for the Isha time, because of those who were not present in the congregational prayer, those who were in their homes, so that they can know when the Isha time came in, and they would pray Isha prayer. And so even if they made an Isha, they made adhan for Isha inside the mosque due to the combination of the prayer as a result of the heavy rain, this does not negate the recommendation of also making adhan for Isha when the Isha time comes in.
ويصلون العشاء 4 وليس قصرا، القصر للمسافر.
And in this case, when we're speaking about combining the prayer and congregation due to the heavy rain, they would pray the Isha prayer 4 rak'ahs, and they would not shorten it because the shortening of the prayers applies to the traveler.
يقول كالمجموعة لمطر ونحوه. ما المراد بنحوه؟ الطين الوحل، يعني الطين ولو كان المطر انقطع لكن الطرقات فيها طين وحل، ليس الطين الجاف بل الذي تغوص فيه الرجل. هذا أيضا مما يبيح تقديم العشاء للمغرب.
He said in the text, the author said the prayer that is combined in congregation due to rain and others, like for another reason where this combination of the prayer would occur, the combining of the prayers would occur, is due to the presence of severe mud. Not the mere mud that is dry, but mud that if one were to step into it, his foot would be immersed or would be submerged in this mud. In this case, one is also able to bring Isha forward to Maghrib. Yani in the case when this mud is present, even if the rain stopped, but this mud is present, he is permitted to bring the Isha forward to Maghrib.
قال ولا يشترط نية الإمامة مع التحرم في غير ذلك، كأن شرع في صلاة منفردا ثم رأى من ائتم به فنوى الإمامة له ذلك وحصل له الفضل. إن بدأ الصلاة منفردا ثم أحس بشخص اقتدى به، له أن يغير نيته إلى الإمامية حتى يحصل ثواب الجماعة، وإلا إن لم ينوي الإمامية المأموم حصل ثواب الجماعة وهو لم يحصلها بل حصل ثواب المنفرد.
And in other cases, intending to lead the prayer is not a condition. We said intending to lead the prayer is a condition. With the prayers where congregation is a condition for the validity of the prayer. In other prayers, it's not a condition for him to intend leading the prayers. Like the one who starts praying individually and he sees that someone wants to follow him in the prayer. In this case, he can change his intention to lead him in prayer because he sees that someone wants to follow him. And this is allowed and they would achieve the merit of congregation. However, if a person comes to pray behind him and this person who is apparently the imam does not intend leading the prayer, then this one who is following him would achieve the merit of congregation, and this one who is apparently leading but did not make the intention of leading, he would not attain the merit of congregational prayer.
مر آنفا معنا أنه إن بدأ منفردا ليس له أن ينوي الاقتداء، أن يغير نيته إلى أن يصير مقتديا. لما يجوز له أن يغير نيته إلى أن يصير إماما؟ يعني لما هذا يجوز له وذاك لا؟ لأن الإمام في كل صلاته يراعي أفعال نفسه فقط، والمأمومون يتبعونه، أما المأموم عليه أن يراعي أفعال الإمام.
So we just mentioned a short time ago that when it comes to the one who starts praying individually and he wants to then follow someone in the prayer, then if he does so, if he changes his intention, his prayer would be invalidated. However, when it comes to the person who starts praying individually and someone wants to pray behind him and so he changes his intention to lead him in prayer, then this does not invalidate his prayer. Rather, it is permissible and he would get the merit of congregation. Why is this difference here? In one case, one's prayer would be invalidated. In another case, it is valid. Because the imam, when he leads, in every prayer that he prays, he is concerned with his actions only. However, when it comes to the one who wants to follow someone else in the prayer, the follower needs to consider his own actions as well as the actions of the imam himself.
يعني مثلا قد يكون المأموم في أولاه والإمام في ثانيته، فالإمام يجلس للتشهد الأول، وبالنسبة للمأموم هذه الأولى لا جلوس فيها، فمجبر يجب عليه مراعاة ترتيب الإمام، فيجلس معه ولو كان هذه بالنسبة له أولاه. فلأجل هذا يوجد فرق يعني بين أن يغير الإمام نيته وهو يراعي نفسه دائما، وبين أن يغير المأموم نيته فيصير مضطرا لمراعاة ترتيب الإمام ولو كان مخالفا لترتيبه، ولو كان هذا الترتيب لو فعله وحده لبطلت صلاته.
So the follower, an example of this is the follower is in the beginning of the prayer and the imam is in the second rak'ah of the prayer. So the imam at the end of the second rak'ah of the prayer, he sits for the tashahhud. So this follower who's in his first rak'ah, he would be obligated to sit with the imam in order to follow the order of the imam.
يغير ترتيب نفسه وترتيب صلاته التي تصح بها، ويفعل ما لو فعله منفردا لبطلت صلاته.
However, if he changes his intention to follow a person, to follow the imam in the prayer, then this would lead him to need to change the order of the steps of the prayer for himself. And this changing of the order for the prayer for himself, if he were praying alone, this would invalidate the prayer. So this is why they mention that the one who is following cannot, the one who started individually cannot change his intention to then follow an imam if he started individually.
وسبحان الله والحمد لله رب العالمين والله سبحانه وتعالى أعلم. تفضل. ما شرط إذا كان المطر ينزل عندهم. نعم، ولو بعد دخول المغرب نوى مع فاصل يسير يكفي أيضا، ولو توقف المطر بعد الدخول بالمغرب توقف. نعم. تفضل حج سهاد. الصبح الذي هو فريضة مع التراويح التي هي نافلة عندهم لا يصح، عند الشافعية يصح.
Praying the qada subuh prayer, the obligatory qada subuh prayer behind the one who is praying tarawih is not valid according to the Malikis because tarawih is recommended. However, according to the Shafi'is, this would be valid.
نعم. سؤال. لا، ليس عذرا، عليه أن يعرف من الابتداء ماذا يصلي الإمام قبل أن يقتدي به.
So the brother asked about if someone prayed behind someone and he didn't know that the imam was praying another prayer, for example. Is this an excuse? The answer is no, it's not an excuse because he should know, he needs to know. It is a condition that he knows from the beginning what the imam, what this person is praying.
لأن الجماعة لا تصح مطلقا كما هو عند الشافعي طالما انتظم نظم الصلاتين.
Because according to them, the congregational prayer is not valid without any restriction like the Shafi'is. According to the Shafi'is, the congregational prayer is valid without restriction, except that the format of the two prayers must be the same.
الآن الثاني.
شخص جاء هنا مسافر أراد أن يبقى هنا كل الأسبوع وكان يقصد يجمع جاهلا لا يعرف أن هذا غير صحيح.
إن نوى من الابتداء أكثر من 3 أيام غير يوم الدخول والخروج يعيد هذه الصلوات. نعم يعيد ما قدمه.
If he entered into the town and he intended to stay in the town for more than 3 complete days, then he would need to make up those prayers that he prayed.
لا.
Ignorance is not an excuse here.
تفضل. قضاء مع قضاء. نعم وانت قضاء ظهر كمان نفس بس ظهر. هيدا اللي قالوا فيه خلاف، بعضهم خفف هذا قال ظهر مع ظهر قضاء مع قضاء، بعضهم قال لا يشترط الزمن فيه. صح هيدا المشهور عندهم، وخفف ذلك بعضهم فقال في هذه الأخيرة يصح.
So a brother is asking about an imam who's praying the dhuhr, a make-up dhuhr from yesterday for example, and another person, he wants to follow him, he also wants to make up a dhuhr prayer, but he doesn't know which day exactly he is making up. And so this one, we said there is a difference of opinion. The famous saying in the school is that if it needs to be of the same date. So if the imam is praying the make-up dhuhr prayer of yesterday, the one who is following behind him must also be praying the make-up dhuhr prayer of yesterday. And we said some of the Malikis, they made it easier, and they said that in this case the date is not a condition. So as long as it's a dhuhr prayer behind a dhuhr prayer and make-up behind a make-up prayer, dhuhr, make-up, then this is still valid according to them, even if the dates are different.
تفضل. ما سمعت. نعم ليس عندهم تقدم، لو صلى أمامه بمترين لا لم يحد ذلك حدا، متى ما تقدم عليه. بعضهم يقولون مكروه إن لم يكن ضرورة، وإلا لا كراهة. ضرورة كأن يكون زحام مثلا.
So the brother is asking about what is given consideration for preceding the imam in standing. Is it like the Shafi'is where they consider the heel, the position of the heel? The Shaykh said it's not specified, but they say that it's disliked for the person to precede the imam in the standing position unless there's a necessity, in which case there would be no dislikeness even if he were to precede the imam in the standing position, such as if it was very crowded, so he had to stand ahead of the imam.
تفضلي. لا يؤثر.
There's a question that sometimes they'll be following the imam, and they hear him in the beginning and they know what his positions are, but sometimes throughout the prayer, maybe when he gets out of sujood or the like, they are not exactly, they cannot hear him, for example, so they're not exactly sure. Does this affect the validity of the prayer because of this small part of the prayer where they are not able to hear the imam, for example, to know his position? This does not affect the validity of the prayer. It's still valid.
إنما إن سمعناه مثلا وكنا في السجود ظننا أن هذا للقيام من السجود فوجدناه ينزل للسجدة الثانية فقد فعل القيام قبلا نسرع بعده لنلحقه فقط.
If, for example, we are in sujood and we heard the Imam make takbir and we thought that was for him standing to sit back, to sit after the first sujood, but in reality he was making the second sujood now. So what we do is we follow him and we try to reach him, be in the same position as him.
نعم. شرطان شو هن؟ أن يكون مأموما. إن شاء الله الدرس المقبل سنذكر هذا. نعم. إن أراد المسافر أن يقصر ليس له أن يقتدي بالإمام المتم. إن أراد أن يقصر هو يصلي إمام لأنه إن ائتم بمتم عليه أن يتم مثله.
So in this case, if the traveler, if he wants to shorten the prayer, then he needs to be the imam in this case, because if he wants to shorten the prayer, he cannot pray behind the one who prays a complete prayer.
نكمل الحصة الثانية. نعم. عند الشافعي إن كان يصلي منفردا له أن ينتقل للجماعة، وإن كان يصلي جماعة له أن ينتقل للانفراد، في كلا الحالين يجوز له. نعم كذلك إن بدأ منفردا فرأى من اقتدى به ينوي الإمامية وله ثواب الإمامية. ينوي أنه صار إماما، ينوون أنه صار إمامهم.
So just two quick questions. According to the Shafi'is, one is permitted to change his intention if he was started individually to change it to be praying in congregational prayer, and if he is praying in congregation he can change his intention to now pray individually according to a Shafi'i. Now according to what we mentioned about if a person becomes imam, for example, what do the followers do? Another person is now the imam. What do the followers do? Then they intend following this person who's now their new imam.
نعم. التسليمة الأولى هي الواجبة. إن سلم الإمام التسليمة الأولى يكفي للمأمومين أن يسلموا ويقوموا ولو لم يسلم هو التسليمة الثانية بعد.
Did you understand? Okay. If the question was if the imam completed saying his first salam, he did not start saying the second salam, so the follower after the imam said his first closing salam, the follower said his closing salam, and he did not wait for the imam to say the second closing salam. What's considered here is the first closing salam. As soon as the imam completes saying the first closing salam, then the follower would say the closing salam even if he does not say the second salam.
لكن بشرط أن يبدأوا هم قبل أن ينهي هو قوله السلام عليكم ولو لم يقل ورحمة الله. إن قال السلام عليكم فبدأت أنت يكفي. أما قبل أن يقول عليكم هو إن بدأت أنت بالسلام فسدت صلاتك.
It must be the salam of the follower must follow the word alaykum, and the imam says assalamu alaykum as soon as he finishes saying the word alaykum, even if he didn't start saying wa rahmatullah, then the follower can start saying as-salam. But if he starts the follower says Assalamu alaikum, initiates the salam, while the imam has not yet completed saying the word alaykum, then the prayer of the follower would be invalidated.
بارك الله فيكم.
بارك الله فيكم. نهلل لا إله إلا الله اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله